From 1965, we just heard the Zombies with Whenever You're Ready, right here on the Vintage Rock and Pop Shop, a song written by our guest today, Rod Argent. And Rod has been gracious enough to give us a few moments of his time today to chat about the Zombies' past and present. Rod, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
I know that you're a busy guy. In fact, I think there's some kind of synergy going on with the Zombies, because not only do you have a brand new CD out, Breathe Out, Breathe In,
Yep.
great new album, but this also comes right around the same time that you got a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nomination.
Well, we have indeed. We were so knocked out. I mean, you know, it's something that we've sort of dreamed might happen over the years, and we've never been nominated before, and then suddenly we are. It's great. I mean, we're very excited about it.
You know, I have to admit that when I heard the news, my first thought was, wait a minute, they're not already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Oh, that's kind of you.
I had someone who's a big Zombies fan and wanted me to ask a question on his behalf to you.
Okay.
Obviously, when people think of the Zombies, they think of, coming along in that first, slightly after that first wave of Beatlemania and the British invasion in the States. But were you guys listening to what your contemporaries or your peers were doing in America, groups like the Beach Boys and the Left Bank? Were you paying attention to those groups at the time?
Do you know, at the time, I'd say no, with the exception of the Beach Boys to some degree, although the Beach Boys came to me much later on. I mean, I always loved the Beach Boys, what I'd heard, but when Good Vibrations came out, that was the track that knocked my socks off. I certainly listened to that, and we were heavily influenced by that in terms of being completely knocked out by it, by the bass lines on it. The way, in a way, I'd always loved writing bass lines. I mean, in my songs, things like She's Not There, that bass line wasn't just made up on the spot by Chris. It was an integral part of the song. It was a line I wrote when I wrote the song. And so I always was very interested in that. But at the same time, I think with Good Vibrations and all the Pet Sounds stuff, Brian Wilson developed the melodic bass line, and it was something which really inspired me to go more in that direction as well. So I would say that was an influence. But around 64, I was much more influenced, by English groups, but even before that, I'd say, even more important than that, American rhythm and blues groups like everything that was coming out of Motown, and the blues, the country and urban blues that was going on. It was the same for a lot of English groups. People like Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker. No one told me the first line of She's Not There actually came about. I mean, not melodically or anything, but just those few words. That was the beginning of No One Told Me About Her. The beginning of She's Not There. So I would say those black influences and the early rock and roll things that came from Elvis, only the early Elvis, I have to say, for me,
right.
The first 3 years of Elvis still sound transcendent to me. They still sound wonderful. But after the first 3 years, for me personally, forget about it. But those first 3 years still sound wonderful. And all the black music that I was discovering around that time, in common with many English bands, we were sort of filtering it and re-exporting it, really. But also, I was listening to a lot of American jazz at the time, particularly the Miles Davis group of around 58, 59, 60, with John Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley and Bill Evans playing. That was very important to me at the time. And those elements got sort of indirectly mixed into what we were doing, even though I thought we were just singing a rock and roll song, But those, they did find their way through slightly. But, the Left Bank I got to know later. And in fact, we played with them in New York a couple of years ago, and it was great meeting them and playing with them. But I wasn't really very aware of them at the time.
Well, it's interesting that all these things, and you mentioned the Miles Davis, and you can hear all these things got mixed up in the zombie brew,
Yeah, it really did.
I want to go back to, I guess it was about 10 years ago or so that you decided to, make the Zombies a going concern again. What prompted that decision?
Well, Well, it was really, it happened by accident because I hadn't played live for years, and I was involved with music. I was producing other artists, I was writing music for television and all sorts of things, and playing on other artists' albums, but I thought that, I wasn't going to be playing live again. And then a jazz musician friend of mine, John Dankworth, John Dankworth and Cleo Lane, were building a new theatre close to where I live, and John asked me to do a concert, a charity concert. So I thought, well, what the hell? And I did. And I played all sorts of styles of music on the concert, including jazz and classical music, but also I reformed Argent for a 40-minute set. And in the audience was Colin Blunstone. And just on the spur of the moment, Colin got up and sang She's Not There in Time the Season with me. And we had such a ball, and it felt so natural and easy that after the show, Colin said, I've been asked to do half a dozen gigs in next year. Why don't you do them with me? And I thought, well, that might be fun, So I did them, and to our astonishment, it was hugely successful, and we had a great time. And suddenly, out of nowhere, we were back on the road, and that 6 gigs has actually turned into 13 years of touring around the world, to our complete surprise.
Well, it's a funny thing because over the years, certainly the Zombies have always been respected, but over the years it seems like that respect has grown, and I don't know if that's a case of you're out there now and people can actually see you guys for themselves. Maybe it was reissues and box sets and that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, it's been really extraordinary, and for some strange reason, in the last 18 months, things have actually gone up a notch, which is ridiculous. At our advanced stage. But I think it's all the things that you mentioned, actually. I think it's the fact that it's the media, because people take YouTube footage wherever we play, and even though the quality is not very good, as you know, on YouTube, sure. It sort of shows and proves that we can still cut it. And that we can still, at least get on stage unaided. In fact, there's more energy on stage now than when I first set out. I mean, we have a ball on stage. We've got a great band. The word has got out as far as that's concerned. The reviews have just got better and better. We've done things like the South by Southwest Festival for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was a huge success. And I thought we were going to be completely lost there, to be honest. I was really worried about that. I mean, I knew, apart from anything else, that there are hundreds of bands playing there. I knew that on our last gig, the showcase gig that we did, Prince was 200 yards down the road playing a concert. Dave Grohl was around the corner. And I thought no one was going to be there, but in fact we sold out. There were 1,000 people in the venue, and they were turning people away. And we got reviewed by all the Texas newspapers. It was great, actually. And I don't quite know why all this has happened, but we're having a ball. I think the band has never sounded so good. We're loving writing and recording new material, because that's an important part for us of what we do, is not just to look back, but to feel stimulated creatively, to have, to be able to write new material. I mean, we're writing material. I mean, this album has just come out a little while ago, Breathe Out, Breathe In, but we're writing a new material. We're writing material for a new album too. Wow. We've already got 3 songs written, 1 song 80% recorded, I guess. The difficulty is actually finding the time to be around long enough to concentrate on it, and because we're working so much live. So, but it's very exciting, and the fact that people like Eminem's just reworked Time of Season in a song called Rhyme or Reason on his new album, which is at present #1 in the States and the UK. So and had a completely different look and sound, obviously, to the track, a real reworking, which I always prefer, actually, rather than a straight cover, someone doing something really inventive and spinning it into something completely different. I always prefer that, because it gives a fresh look, a fresh slant. It means someone's working creatively in their own vein on something. So it's all feeling pretty good at the moment. I have to say I love it, because he's it's a million miles from where Time of the Season was originally, but the track is heavily sampled. There's loads of us on it, and I love the way that he actually he takes, it's the time of the season for loving, and turns it into there's no rhyme or no reason for nothing. It sounds almost identical, but it completely inverts the sentiment of the song. It means the absolute opposite, And at one point he sings, "It's the time of the season when hate runs high." He puts his own thing on it, and it's very inventive. And I had to hear it about a month ago. I wasn't allowed to tell it anybody,
right.
So I had to approve it. And my initial reaction was, "Well, I absolutely love it," and I did. And that was my first response to it. I know some purists, on their Facebook have been saying, "Oh, this is terrible, it's a travesty," but not to my ears.
You mentioned the enthusiasm that the band has on stage now,
Yeah.
and comparing it to when the Zombies first started out. When it comes to recording, obviously, it's a totally different situation technologically now, recording. How different is it now than when it was, say, back in 1966?
Well, in some ways it's very different. In other ways it's exactly the same. I've done lots of record production over my career, and I'm perfectly used to working with multi-track, unlimited numbers of tracks now. Whereas, obviously back when we started with Decca, we were working on 4 tracks. That's all there was. And when we got 2 4-track machines together to work on with Odyssey and Oracle, it felt like, unbelievable riches. It really did, but the actual essentials, in my opinion, remain exactly the same. It doesn't matter what technology you use, recording, if it's done properly, is about capturing a performance, and we try and center ourselves on that. So all the tracks on the new Breathe Out, Breathe In album, we typically made sure we recorded as much of the backing track with everyone in the same room together as possible, rather than do it in a sterile way, just layering things. And we tried to record it in a focused and fairly quick way. I mean, we prepared the track, but then when we all got together, we did it very much like we used to in the old days, and typically recorded the backing track in about 3 hours. I would then put a demo lead vocal on, if it was my song, which 9 out of the 10 tracks were, for Colin to learn. He'd approved the track beforehand, but to get him to learn. And then I'd have a day just with me and Colin in the studio, where we would, in a relaxed way, explore the lead vocal on the track, but always in complete performances, never, dropping him in line by line. We would comp a little bit, we would make up a composite a little bit, but always from complete organic performances. So we were always trying to capture performance. And then we would take one more day to actually explore harmonies, which we've always loved doing and enjoyed doing, and that was important to us. And on this particular album, we tried to overdub as little as possible, so we can do everything on stage that's on the album as well. So they were the criteria that were in our mind when we actually recorded, and so it was a stimulating experience and really enjoyable experience to record. So in some ways, we were trying to keep to the same values that we were when we were forced to record quickly in the old days, but at the same time embracing the technology and using as many tracks as we wanted, and using every modern convenience, but trying to make the essentials the same, because it really is about capturing performance, in my opinion.
We just heard the Zombies with the title track from their new CD, Breathe Out, Breathe In. Rod Argent is our guest. And one of the songs on this new album is perfect for this time of year. And it's a song you actually recorded with your group Argent, but now re-recorded as a Zombies track. Tell us a little bit about Christmas for the Free, and then we'll play the song.
Well, there are very few things that I've wanted to redo, but that was one of them, because it was recorded very quickly in an Argent session. I did a one-take vocal. I actually, strangely enough, think my voice is much stronger now than it was then. So I always longed to hear that song redone, because I didn't think the vocal performance in the Argent version was as strong as it could be. Collins always loved the song. It's always been one of my favourite songs that I've written. I remember Russ Ballard, who was the lead singer in Argent, always adored that song, and he said he cried when he first heard it. And it has captured something for me. It's a song that I'm really happy with. It was written towards the end of the Vietnam War, and it expressed my frustration at the time with the plight of so many people around the world. While we were quite justifiably enjoying Christmas, and celebrating it, there were so many people, the majority of the world's population weren't in a position to do that, with all the poverty and the war that was going on and the privation that people had to suffer. And what particularly galled me at that time when I wrote the song was the way that so many politicians seemed to just be concerned with their own status, and they would argue about meaningless points of position. When people were out there dying, "Bloody in a Winter Wonderland" is one of the one of the lines in the song. Blunt is the pain of hunger, cold is the wind of grief. Motherless child has a hard time for comfort. Jesus, this is Christmas for the free. In other words, it's Christmas for us. But, and it's supposed to be a day of peace. I'm not overtly religious, but in a general way, I believe Christmas is supposed to celebrate those values. And it was just the frustration with everything that was going on. Unfortunately, the song is never out of fashion and has never been out of fashion since I wrote it and since we recorded it. And I was really pleased with this recording. And I'm knocked out that people seem to think that it should be something that could be released now again.
This is the day for the free.
That's Christmas for the Free by the Zombies from the new CD, Breathe Out, Breathe In. Rod Argent is our guest, and we talked a little bit about artists from the past that influenced you, but what about today? Is there any new music out there today that you're into?
Well, do you know, I guess in common with a lot of people my age, when you're 18, it's always struck me that when you're 18, you're constantly, you're not married, and, well, I mean, maybe some people are, but I certainly wasn't. And, I didn't have a steady girlfriend at that time. You're constantly going around with people of your own age to parties. You're without trying, you're hearing every new thing that's coming out, by your peer group, talking about it, etc., etc. And the way you mix socially, it makes it very easy to know everything that's going on and be very excited by it. These days, I don't listen to anything like enough of I'm sure there are modern things out there that I really like. Maybe I wouldn't have heard the new Eminem album yet if I hadn't known that Rhyme or Reason was on it, Time of the Season.
Right.
But when I heard the track, I loved it, if you see what I mean. There are one or two bands that I hear sort of almost by accident that I really like. Kings of Leon, a couple of years ago, knocked me out with the album that they had out. There's an English girl called Emily Sandé, whose records I like. But I don't get as passionate about the stuff that's around now that I happen to hear as I did, when I was 18 or 19 years old. I have to be honest about that. And quite often on my iPod, I'm still playing a lot of the stuff that I played then in terms of the influences I had. Like, I still, I might have things on shuffle and there might be a Ray Charles or a Donny Hathaway album come on, followed by a bit of Bach, followed by a Miles Davis record, followed by a bit of Keith Jarrett, followed by some old blues or something. A lot of that still gets mixed into what I listen to, and I don't listen to as much modern music as I should, I know.
Well, I'll tell you what, some of these new acts are certainly listening to you. And,
that's so nice. And it's not only Eminem that as a rap artist. There've been, and I can't remember their names now, but there have been quite a few rap artists that have sampled Time of the Season alone.
Yeah.
Which is great, and and we're lucky enough, fortunate enough to be named by many young emerging indie groups as well as more established people as well. That's been so nice.
Once again, the new album is Breathe Out, Breathe In, The Zombies. Before I let you go, where can people go to find out about the record, find out what the Zombies are doing? You mentioned Facebook, and I'm sure there's a website and all that stuff.
If they look at thezombies.net is our website. It's constantly updated. It's constantly being attended to. There's all sorts of video clips of bits and pieces from the Breathe Out, Breathe In album on there, of us making it. And singing some of the parts on it as we were recording, so you can find those bits. All sorts of news, all the future dates that we're doing. We've tried to clear the decks for 2 to 3 months, so that we can at least start the process of writing and recording a little bit of the new album, the next album. But we're back on a Moody Blues cruise. With the Moody's, Roger Daltrey, but we're doing a UK tour at the first part of next year as well. But it's all on the website, and there is Facebook, absolutely, and you can access the Facebook through the website. It's thezombies.net.
Well, there you go. The Zombies are certainly connected to the World Wide Web, then, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And well, it's great. You get to hear from fans all over the world in a way that you never would have.
Absolutely, and that's it's so nice to feel that surge of interest from everywhere. It's really great and unlooked for, at this stage in our careers. The fact that we can still feel that we've got a creative path forward at a time when a lot of my friends over here are retiring.
Right.
It feels like a privilege.
Rod Argent, thanks so much for being on the show with us.
Great pleasure. Thanks for having me on.